Good morning, folks. Chris in Gauteng province in the Highveld of South Africa. Very disappointing news last night for the government of South Africa, which instead of showing honesty and humility has done exactly what sadly I predicted. They're doubling down. The statement from DIRCO, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, is a fantasy fest that's really disappointing. Rather than making a genuine effort to work with the United States to resolve the issues between these two countries, Ronnie Lamola's ministry has issued a statement full of utter nonsense, specifically calling people who've been given refugee designation alleged refugees, then citing the 1951 Convention on Refugees. That's all fine and dandy, but that really isn't germane. The 1951 Convention guides international recognition of refugees and gives them protected status. But the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1980 determines what the United States does, not the international accords. Our refugee acceptance goes far deeper and broader than the limited international version, which allows us to help people in need around the country who are being persecuted. So, once again, the government of South Africa frequently, and its politicians, love to claim that the United States is intruding in South Africa's sovereignty. But in this case, this is an intrusion into the United States sovereignty. Our law is clear. It's all there for everyone to see. The priorities of people who can be classified or considered as refugee. Now, South Africa, if DIRCO wants to go with the technical definition, if that's their point, in fact, none of these people are refugees, not under the international standard. However, our law allows for in-country refugee status. So you're not technically a refugee, but you're being granted the privileges and rights of a refugee because you're a persecuted class or group of people. And they go on to talk about well-founded fear or having been persecuted. Well, under our law, we have a category that allows for people to come, whether they have experienced that or not, whether they have a well-founded fear or not. The Congress, the Secretary of State, or the President can designate a group of people. And I've talked about this endlessly. Let's say you're homosexual and you live in Syria. Not the best place to be gay, is it? Well, some people, radicals in that country, are likely to drop a person off of a roof. So should we wait until you've been dropped off a roof to grant you refugee status? Or do we grant it while you're still there and help you escape? And that's what's going on here. The government of South Africa seems uninterested, unwilling, or incapable of understanding that. Much like President Trump's executive order on the 7th of February 2025, when he clearly stated 4 main reasons why he issued the order and the issues that the United States government has with South Africa. Make no mistake, it's the United States government. It's not Donald Trump. This issue predates Trump by many years. And as I've reportedly said, in 2024, in February, a bipartisan group of members of the House of Representatives initiated a bill to do exactly what Representative Ronnie Jackson is trying to do now. Investigate the bilateral relationship between the United States and South Africa to see if it remains mutually beneficial or if it's in fact antagonistic, as many officials claim, towards the United States and our foreign policy and our national interest. The one difference here that's clear is that Jackson has included a section in that bill that's in the House right now, probably in committee, to sanction or to target specific officials in the government and the African National Congress for their actions. It's ironic that when a minority government ruled over a majority, the world lost its mind, and rightly so in many respects. But while a majority government abuses ethnic minorities, the world stays silent and looks the other way. And much like the apartheid era, when many countries in the developed world were arguably complicit in accepting or tolerating, at least tacitly, what was happening in South Africa, these same countries remain complicit today, 30 years, and we see what's happening. Make no mistake, folks, what happens to minority South Africans happens to all South Africans. Crime is horrific. The abuse, the lack of the rule of law, the crumbling infrastructure, the joblessness, the fleeing capital, the fleeing human capital, all of that harms all South Africans. Xhosa, Zulu, Venda, Ndebele, Swati, Tswana, Afrikaner, Portuguese, German, English. Take your pick. Colored, Khoi, San. All people are affected by it. But some people are being specifically targeted, both by criminals, because of their skin color, their lack of pigmentation, and by the government. The government says there's no discrimination. Yet they have 140 plus laws on the books that specifically discriminate. And I remind you of the North Gauteng High Court's decision that the tourism relief fund was constitutional, even though it was discriminatory and racist. Only people from historically disadvantaged groups could apply for that fund. They found that to be constitutional. Of course, once the money was drained, the Supreme Court of Appeal overturned that decision, saying it was unconstitutional because it was racist. Just because something happened to a group of people in the past doesn't make it just, legitimate, or moral to do the exact same thing to another group of people. And here's the really sad part about all this. The groups walking around, it's a very small number of people, but they're significant because the media promotes them, or at least promotes their story. The small group of people running around threatening others, acting like supremacists, black supremacists in particular, that small group of people, the overwhelming majority of them never existed during apartheid. They weren't a glint in their daddy's eyes. And the same with most whites in this country, or coloreds or Indians. Most South Africans were born after the end of apartheid, under just one government, the African National Congress, with the exception of the Western Cape for most of that time. So, who's to blame here for this situation? Jan van Riebeck, Hendrik Verwoerd, apartheid, Great Britain? Maybe people should do some introspection and look at the problems here. And the rent-seeking, the vast patronage, the corruption, the theft. People need to take a close look at that. That's why South Africa is in the problem it's in. And this horrible abuse of minorities, which the world has tolerated and ignored. And every time somebody steps forward and says something, they're called a racist. Reporting the gang rape, the throat being slit, 80-year-old people being pummeled to death, 67-year-old man being murdered with a panga at his restaurant that wasn't even in business because of lockdown. That's racist? No. That's sad. That's tragic. That's horrific. And I could go on and on about Safia Fatso-Pule, who was 9 months pregnant, murdered, hung from a tree. The young lady who was raped and murdered at UCT to pick up a package. She was lured there by the scumbag that murdered her. The black cattle farmer in the Free State, shot in the head at his butchery, in a coma for months, recovers, goes home, dies of complications from that gunshot wound to his head a few months later. The Indian mother, 4 months pregnant on the Ayub farm, her throat slit from ear to ear, murdered. Why? Why is this tolerated? Why does the government do this? Back to the story with the so-called refugees. They're not so-called refugees. These are domestic affairs, internal affairs of the United States. If the United States chooses to identify blue Alpha Centaurians who just landed here from another galaxy as refugees under a special category because we believe that people discriminate against them or harm them, well, that is our prerogative under our law. We're a sovereign nation. South Africa likes to crow about its sovereignty, and it should. South Africa is a sovereign nation. It can make its own decisions in the international community. But Friends of Family Only Fridays proved once again, last night, that bad decisions are made all the time by people who should be smarter than they are. For some reason, they're not. So once again, I'm dismayed, but not at all surprised by the statement coming from the Department of International Relations Cooperation that makes claims that are ludicrous, impinges on American sovereignty, and instead of working to cooperate with the United States to discourage people from leaving South Africa, they actually have encouraged people to leave South Africa based on their statement. They just don't get it. I think they don't want to get it. What say you, South Africa, Zanzi, world? What do you say? It's sad. It's come to this. And it's all come to a head now because of the big blabbermouths who've now reported that the first batch of refugees will be arriving in the States soon. Some people have known that for some time. Some people keep their mouths shut. It's a security issue. People's safety and security is at risk on a number of levels. If you're one of those people, I'd suggest you keep your mouth shut and go about your business and do what you're supposed to. My government has now revealed it, so it's out there in the public domain. Let's see what happens going forward. Buckle up, South Africa. Things are going to get very bumpy from this point on. And I'm heartbroken. Truly, truly heartbroken. For South Africa, for South Africans. God bless. Catch you later.